Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the Browns potentially going wide receiver at pick 54, as one insider hinted at. And then we'll talk about Patrick Peterson maybe joining the Browns if the draft does not provide a cornerback for Cleveland. Bleacher Report thinks that's a possibility. So we'll kind of recap those fronts for you all as we are inching closer and closer to the NFL draft, which is a quick reminder here. You may not love this channel. That's fine. But I do ask that you turn on your notifications, because when we get into the draft, we'll be making videos for every single draft pick that they make. And you want to know everything there is to know about the newest member of the Cleveland Browns. And so just for 72 hours, do yourself a favor, turn on the notifications, hit the bell icon, select it to all. That way when the Browns start making picks and they start flying in, and if you're busy on Saturday not watching round 5, 6, or 7, let me do my job and help you out so you know every single pick the Browns make. Now, Mary Kay Cabot from Cleveland.com dropped a list of 5 wide receivers the Browns could be looking at in rounds 2 and 3. And she started off with Western Kentucky Malachi Corley, which makes me think she might watch the show. And that would be a great honor. But Malachi Corley, 5'11", 210 pounds. So he's not the biggest receiver, but he's definitely far from the smallest. Like, you get some Xavier Worthies, Troy Franklins that are in that 160 to 170 neighborhood. He's got some muscle to him. So he's not going to be someone that you can just blow over. He's the Yak King. If you're really just tuning in to some draft content for the first time, let me give you the spark notes on some of these players. He is yards after catch monster. He is the next Deebo Samuel that you can use him in a variety of ways. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him in the slot. You can line him up, use him in jet sweeps. Line him up wherever you want. Get the football in his hands near the line of scrimmage, and he'll do the rest of the distance. Now, Corley last year, he was dominant for Western Kentucky, 984 yards, 11 touchdowns. The funny thing is I spent so much time talking about him, I still don't even know who his quarterback was. But if you put up 11 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons at Western Kentucky and Bailey Zappi wasn't your QB, you're probably doing something right as a wide receiver. I personally think that Corley will ultimately go round 3. So if you're looking at picks for 54, I think Corley fits at 70 whatever for the Browns better, because when you're a bit of a one-trickish pony like Corley is, and you go to a non-Power 5 school, you're probably going to get overlooked by a handful of teams. So I think this is a target for round 3 for Cleveland. All right, let's move on to the second player that MKC listed, which was Oregon's Troy Franklin. It's kind of funny that I think Troy Franklin was like the first player we talked about as a legitimate draft target for the Browns back in like January, February, before the Jerry Jeudy trade. And I think that dramatically alters their draft strategy now that they have Jeudy. But if they think that Troy Franklin is the next big vertical playmaker that they just can't live without, then I could see him being an option for them in round number 2. I don't think he falls to round 3. Now, he could stand to put some meat on his bones. Like 6'2", 176 pounds. He's going to go up against some 15, 20-pound bigger NFL DBs that are just going to jam him at the line of scrimmage. But if he can maybe add to his frame a little bit, he definitely has the potential to be an explosive playmaker down the field. He's not necessarily the fastest guy in this wide receiver class, but a 4.41 40-yard dash is very respectable. And he's one of Oregon's greatest wide receivers just from a production standpoint all time. Like 25 touchdowns over 3 years in Eugene. That's Oregon's all-time receiving leader right there, believe it or not. So I think Troy Franklin could be like a Marquise Goodwin on steroids, like a vertical track star that probably doesn't have an extensive route tree, probably can't make very tough grabs for you on 3rd and 7 to move the chains. But if you're looking to uncork one on 1st and 10 after getting the ball at the 25-yard line, like he's the kind of guy that could go be a big playmaker for you down the field, a little bit like Travis Benjamin. So I think there are some things to Franklin's game that the Browns could fall in love with, but I keep going back to the fact that they added multiple receivers via trade and the draft the last 2 years. I think with their first pick, they're probably going to address a different position. However, if one of these guys has no business falling to them at 54, Andrew Berry is definitely going to be preparing for multiple different scenarios because he's the last guy to make a pick this year. Moving on to number 3 on MKC's list, it is South Carolina's Xavier Legette. So let's get to know Legette a little bit because from a physical standpoint, he's very appealing. 6'1", 221, and he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. Remember Troy Franklin? He ran a 4.41 40-yard dash, and Xavier Legette is about 45 pounds heavier, and he's faster. So if you're looking at it from a physical trait standpoint, he is your slam dunk winner. The issue is, remember how Franklin's the all-time leading touchdown guy for the Oregon Ducks? Xavier Legette's really only got one season of starting experience with the Gamecocks. He started in their bowl game last year, like 2 years ago, at the end of the 2022 season, and then he went off in that game and was their number 1 wide receiver for all of 2023, where he really blossomed. I mean, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, he did a lot of really good things for South Carolina, and he showed just how physically gifted he is. In fact, I complimented DK Metcalf because DK Metcalf is the only other guy to be that big and run that fast at the NFL Combine in the last 10 or so years. Now, the issue with Legette is, if I'm being nitpicky here, he only really has 1 year of starting experience. He went through a lot, both on the field and off the field at South Carolina. He stayed in Columbia during a head coaching change. So if the Browns have patience developing Legette, because I don't think he's going to step onto really anyone's field in 2024 and be a super productive player, but if they don't mind letting him be a healthy scratch for much of this year, because I think that's a path he would likely be on with the Browns, then I can see the upside in 2025 and beyond. But I go back to what Andrew Berry said at a press conference at the NFL owners meeting, where he spoke very highly of Amari Cooper and wanting to keep Amari Cooper beyond 2024. And they've already locked up Jerry Jeudy long-term. If they lock up Cooper long-term, maybe they decide this is the year to add a third wide receiver, or maybe they stick with their recent draft picks in Cedric Tillman, David Bell, and then the trade they made for Elijah Moore, and see if one of those 3 guys can blossom into a number 3 on this team. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to highlight our sponsor super quickly, and that is Game Time. If you're looking to go to a playoff Cavs game, you want to go catch a Guardians game, or you want to catch any other sporting event in your local area, download Game Time today because they're going to give the Dog Pound $20 off their first purchase when you use code CHATSPORTS. So if you are looking to check out a concert in your area or anything else that needs tickets, Game Time is the place to visit first because with this $20 off deal, I view it as Game Time just taking care of your parking, your first concession run. So why not put the tab on them and score some awesome seats in the process? So download the Game Time app, use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off, terms apply, and you're going to get a great deal for your first purchase. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Game Time. Check them out today. It's the best place for last-minute seats at the lowest price guaranteed. Coming in at number 4 on Mary Kay's list is Georgia's Ladd McConkey. Now, I don't think Mary Kay is ranking Ladd McConkey as the 4th best of the bunch. I think what she's doing here is she is understanding that Ladd McConkey is likely not going to be there at 54. A lot of the late wins coming out of the NFL draft circles is he could sneak into late to the end of round 1. I'd be very surprised if he is there at 54. It is the NFL draft. We do have to remind ourselves that just because the Mel Kiper mock drafts for the last 2 or 3 months said this guy is going in this round doesn't mean it's set in stone. But I think Ladd McConkey's got a really good chance of going in round 1. And in my mock draft, I think he's ended up going to be a Baltimore Raven at the end of round 1. Now, McConkey's kind of an interesting prospect because when you look at his stats, like who's looking at this and thinking, hands down, round 1? But you got to factor in the injuries he sustained last year. And I think that's a pro as to like what he could have done if he played the full season, but also a little bit of a con, taking a guy who already has injury history. Ultimately, I wouldn't get your hopes up on McConkey. If he's there at 54, Andrew Berry may tear up everything they had planned and just run this pick in himself. But to me, I think he's going to be a late round 1, early round 2 target that Cleveland should not be holding their breath on. And then the fifth wide receiver that MKC targeted for the Browns is a Mississippi State special teamer. It is Legette Griffin. So 5'10", 181 pounds, ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, but he comes in with a lot of special teams value. He averaged 30-plus yards a kick return last year for the Bulldogs. And I know the Browns added Nyheim Hines for special teams, but he's coming off a torn ACL. Plus, the Browns, unfortunately, have some bad luck to their return men just getting out of training camp. So I think it'd be very wise for Cleveland to try and find another return specialist in this draft. If I had to power rank all 32 NFL teams that would lean into the new kick return rules, I would put the Browns towards the top of that list. You've got a bunch of Ivy League guys that are not going to be reactionary people, but they're going to be proactive. And they're going to try and manipulate and take advantage of these new kick return rules that other teams may be sleeping on, okay? So if the Browns feel like this is an area where they can exploit the enemy, then I could see them targeting a guy like Griffin just for special teams alone. So do you want to go wide receiver at pick 54? Give me a yes or give me a no. I'm open to the idea. If a great player falls to you, in my gut, I don't think they're going wide receiver. I just think Andrew Berry, like last year, we saw that at the NFL trade deadline, he expressed some confidence in his wide receiver room. Ended up shipping out DPJ, but he didn't bring anyone in. And that's because I think he likes the room he has traded for and drafted. And he's going to want to see those two types of areas for roster acquisition have room to grow and not stunt previous draft picks and trades by bringing in another wide receiver. So I don't think he goes wide receiver, but if some stud is available, that could definitely change course. All right, to wrap up the show, I just want to go over a Bleacher Report article that someone sent me that listed Patrick Peterson, not my cousin, as a potential Browns free agent target if Cleveland does not draft a cornerback. Now, the former Pittsburgh Steelers started 16 games for the Steel City last year. He played a little bit of corner and safety, and I think that could be something that Jim Schwartz would value if they don't bring in an extra DB in the draft. We know Andrew Berry thinks very highly of this position group. He went Greg Newsome in round 1. He goes Martin Emerson in round 3. Greedy Williams in round 2. Grant Delpit in round 2. He really has a big emphasis on the safety room and the cornerback room, just the DBs all together. So if they don't get one in the draft that they like, maybe they feel like Patrick Peterson, who, Arizona Cardinals legend, had some really good seasons, definitely towards the end of his career. If you have any Steelers friends, you can ask them about Peterson. He didn't have glowing reviews towards the end of his time in Pittsburgh, but I do think he played some solid football all around, and I still think he may have a little bit of gas left in the tank. Probably not to be a starter, which is what ended up happening for much of last year in Pittsburgh due to various injuries and whatnot. But maybe Schwartz feels like this could be my Rodney McLeod for the cornerbacks. Peterson also in March was on Good Morning Football, and he talked about the Browns. He said, you get Deshaun Watson back. You have weapons outside now that's able to help Amari Cooper. You have tight ends that can get open. I am really giddy to see how this team is going to finish this season versus how they finished last season. So Peterson clearly has some interest in the Cleveland Browns. This could be something to watch in training camp. Who remembers last year me petitioning and advocating for Shelby Harris to join the Browns? And I still think I should get 1% of his signing bonus. I'm not going to do the same for Patrick Peterson, despite being a blood relative of mine. But I think that there could be a chance that if in training camp an injury pops up, or maybe some of the rookies and young players aren't looking the part, a little bit like last year on the interior defensive line, then the Browns give Peterson a call. But I don't think this is going to be a priority for them after the draft. Now, when you look at the Browns' defensive back room here, I think it's one of the best DB rooms in the NFL. Didn't look like it last year, or I guess this past season, against the Texans. But I'm not going to just rule out the entire room because of one bad Saturday. You get Juan Thornhill back and healthy. You get Grant Delpit back and healthy. Denzel Ward, if he can just stay healthy. If this room can put together some, healthy runs together, then they're going to be one of the best DB rooms. But I don't think it's wise to just bank on all 5 of these guys playing all 17 games given their injury history. So would you add Patrick Peterson S for sign, P for pass. Get in the comment section below and let me know what you're thinking. To wrap up the show, we will invite Cullen Brown on to pick a card. Everyone type Cullen in the chat. It's a busy week here at Chat Sports with the NFL draft. And Cullen and I are just going like 0 to 60 every single day, no time off. So I really appreciate Cullen making some sacrifices to help me get as much Browns content out to you guys here. So show Cullen some love. And actually, I want Cullen to get the card right.
Thank you.
I would like you to get the card right.
I appreciate it. Let's see if I can get it. By the way, to answer your question earlier, the quarterback that was throwing to Malachi Corley, his name is Austin Reed.
See, this guy's the fucking best. He's fact-checking me, not even know about it.
2023 conference.
That is. I do recognize that name.
Yeah, he's got like a load of accomplishments. Like,
I think he's in the draft this year.
Yep. He was all-conference honorable mention, all-academic team. He was Davey O'Brien quarterback class of 2023. Had like over 3,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks. Like, not bad.
Dude.
Not bad.
Maybe we should draft that guy.
Maybe UDFA or something.
Yeah.
But
which card do you want to go with?
His number is 16, 1 plus 6, 7, diamond in the rough, 7 of diamonds. Long story short.
This man. I'm going to go with just a king of clubs. Close. 6 of hearts. 6 of hearts. All right. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll be seeing you throughout the week with more Browns draft content.